So ready? Ready for our journey? So I'm just going to take you through a few different scriptures, and remember what I said. When I ask a question, I want you to respond back with an answer for me. Ready? Okay. So I'm going to be reading mostly from the ESV. So if you have a different translation, that's all right. But we're going to read from Luke chapter 22 and verses 39 through 34. Sorry, 44. Luke 22, 39 through 44. And he came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. And when he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if you were willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. So what was Jesus doing here? Praying. He knelt down and he prayed. What did he pray? Yeah, he prayed that if you're willing, remove the cup from me, but not my will, yours be done, right? What was Jesus feeling on the Mount of Olives? Agony, yes. And what did he do once he was in agony? He prayed all the more earnestly. How earnest was his prayer? Like, what was so unique about his sweat? Awesome. Okay, so to give you some background on this story, this was the night of Jesus' betrayal. I want us to step back a few days from this day and listen to another interaction with Jesus. And so we're going to go to John chapter 12, verses 23 to 28. John 12, 23 to 28. And Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. Now is my soul troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this purpose I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." So what does Jesus say here about who will keep his life forever? Who is the one who will keep his life forever? The one who loses it. Is it better to lose your life here or to keep it? To lose it. How is Jesus' soul feeling here? Troubled. What does his troubled soul make Jesus want to say? Save me from this hour. How does Jesus instead respond? Yeah, he reminds himself that this is why he came, and he says, "Father, glorify your name." Right? So now let's come back once again to Jesus on the night of his betrayal. But we're now going to read it from Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 to 46. Matthew 26, 36 to 46. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to his disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Then came he to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." What does Jesus say here about his soul? It's very sorrowful, even to death. What is Jesus' posture as he prays? His face is down. What does he ask his disciples to do? Remain and watch with him. But then what does Jesus pray the first time? "Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Yes. What does Jesus say about the spirit and the flesh here? Awesome. What does Jesus pray the second time? Awesome. What does Jesus pray the third time? What are the same words? "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And what does Jesus say about the time that they're in? What is it time for? Time for his betrayal. What does he wake them up to do? Let's get going to meet his betrayer, okay? So is there any question in Jesus' mind of what was about to happen? No. He knew that he was going to be betrayed. He was prepared for this day even before Judas knew that he was going to betray him. Few days before his betrayal, Jesus says that he knew that one who loses his life will gain it. He doesn't want to be saved from his debt. But what happened on the day of his betrayal? His soul becomes so troubled and he's in such agony that he prays that the cup be removed from him, if at all possible. So as I was meditating on this, I asked myself this question: why? Why was Jesus so troubled? I mean, here he is about to conquer death. We know the final end to this story. He was about to pull off the greatest victory of all time. He was about to win. He knew it. Shouldn't he be ready? Shouldn't he be jumping up and down? Because this was the day he was waiting for, the day he warned everyone else about. He prepared everybody else for it. It was the day of his glorification also. We say it's Good Friday. It's a happy day. But Jesus was also about to be mocked. He was to be openly put to shame. His closest friends were about to betray him. And while he knew what was coming, this was not something that he was itching to do necessarily. It was about to be extremely painful. Even before he stepped into the ring, he had to fight a battle on his knees. As I meditated on this for a while, I was floored by one simple truth. It's one thing to know what you should do, but it's completely another thing to do it. I used to think that the giants of faith, the superheroes of faith, the people who just always seem to know how to do the right thing, I thought it always came easy to them. But that I was just a failure because it was too hard for me to do the right thing, and gave myself excuses. Maybe I'm just not as good in my faith as others. But really, the truth is, even Jesus himself chose to obey. So here's what Hebrews 5, 7, and 8 say. I'm not going to ask you any questions about this, but I just want to read this for you. It says, "In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered." He learned obedience. To me, on this Good Friday, the biggest reminder is that although Jesus was God's son, he went through suffering. He chose to go through suffering. I want to take you to one other example, but this one is from the Old Testament, and it's an example of someone who lost his sonship, who was the firstborn, but he lost that right. So I want to read Genesis 25, verses 29 through 34. Genesis 25, 29 through 34. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. This example has always been a bit of a struggle for me in the scriptures. I've honestly thought that God was just a bit too harsh on Esau. He was hungry. I mean, really, what use was his birthright at that moment? But as I stand here, I'm honestly amazed by the difference between Jesus and Esau. Jesus valued his relationship with the Father far more than anything else. In a moment of exhaustion, Esau despised the promises of God. In a time of agony, Jesus instead prayed in earnest that the Father's will be done and not his own. He refused to trade in his suffering for anything else. I'm very, very close to being done here, but just please bear with me. I want to go through a few more scriptures with you. Would you turn to Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 4? Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted in your struggle against sin. You have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. Church, I just want to exhort you today to continue your struggle against sin. Remember Jesus. He laid aside every comfort for our sake. He endured the most brutal pain and shame. He despised the shame. Esau despised his birthright, the promise of blessing that God had promised him. But Jesus resisted to the point of death. If something is difficult for you to resist or for you to suffer, don't allow yourself to give any excuses. Don't grow faint-hearted. Don't grow weary. With Jesus as your example, endure, conquer. Don't trade in your crown of life that is guaranteed for those who overcome. Okay? But as I end, I just want to also share a very, very small story, something that has really, really, really been one thing that has impacted me very greatly. For a long time, I used to pray for this one sin in my life. I was like, God, I just want this one thing to be gone. You're a God of deliverance. I want you to deliver me from this sin. And I'd heard of so many people telling me stories of addictions, of things that they've been able to put aside. The chains were broken and they were able to walk past it. And I just used to always pray. I was like, God, I just want one breakthrough. I was so ashamed by the sin in my life that I just used to keep praying for that one thing. But then one day I heard a story of a man. He was much older. He was probably in his 60s. And he actually told a story. He came into our church in DC and he spoke about his own life, that he was a man who struggled with homosexuality, that he was a man who had spent over 20 years living in open sin And that was his lifestyle. And I heard so many people tell me through scriptures or through debates and conversations, homosexuality is a sin or it's not. There's so many different ways that I've heard it. But for the first time in my life, I actually heard a man talk about the gospel and say that it's not about what you want to do, but it is about what Jesus wants you to do. And he has given us the power to resist sin. And so for the rest of his life, after the 20 years of his adulthood that he had lived in open sin, he actually felt the Lord was calling him to live a life of celibacy, to say no to the very thing that has actually been that was so difficult for him. So it wasn't a heart change that he had where he suddenly developed a desire for the opposite sex, but for him, it was simply a choice to obey. And so, church, I just want to encourage you with that story. And it's not one of great deliverance that we often hear about, but it is one where every one of us has a choice to obey. Every one of us has a choice to overcome the sin that we might be going through. And today, I just want to remind you of what Jesus did on the cross. We know the suffering that he went through, but he is our high priest who sits at the right hand of God. He knows our struggles. You read about him today, the agony, the pain, the suffering that he went through, but yet he chose to say yes for you. So in the same way, let us not be discouraged or disappointed by the sin that so easily entangles, but let us overcome. Let us endure the cross that you are called to bear, that you may overcome and receive the crown of life. Amen. Awesome. Thank you.